Mike Bird is a Montreal-based career coach for students and new graduates. So what a good place to be, and what a more expert on the topic than you. Having worked with students throughout his career, Mike leverages a unique combination of placement, teaching, and competitive coaching experience to serve young people from all over the world. As the founder of Coach Oiseau, right?
Coach Oiseau, very close.
Oh,
very
all right.
close.
I don't have that Montreal accent. Career coaching. So that's your business, right?
Correct. Yeah. Amazing. A play on my name. Coach Oiseau. Oiseau is bird basically in French.
Right.
So.
I like it. I did that. So I did make that connection last time you were at the event. So it's very clever. So he helps clients figure out their next move, brand themselves as ideal candidates, and land their first real job faster. So you are an expert on this topic, and we're really looking forward to your presentation today. So thanks for being here.
Thank you, Rachel. It's a pleasure. Yeah, thanks. I think we'll jump right into it then. This is really the topic that a lot of folks, when they're starting out in the job search, or maybe they've been going through a job search for a little while right now, this is kind of where they encounter some difficulty. And it's totally normal. It's not necessarily a skill set. Communicating our unique value is not something that is really necessarily taught in school or just in the course of our lives in general. And so I'm going to kind of highlight a few different things. As Rachel kind of mentioned, I'm a career coach based in Montreal, and I also get to co-host a podcast that really is aimed at helping people develop their careers early on in their lives or their professional lives. Started this company a couple of years ago. It's been a really wild ride, and certainly the pandemic has made things busy, but it's given me a chance to meet a lot of people in their different situations. My ask from all of you who are with us is play full out. Like, the more engagement you can bring in terms of your questions, especially that you can bring in. I am going to allow probably not quite 10 minutes of time for Q&A. I'm probably going to go a little bit over 20 minutes in terms of my content, but I do want to allow time for specific questions to be answered. If you want me to drill a little bit deeper into some of the things that I talk about, feel free. And if you just sort of have a random off-the-cuff career question you want to ask me, I enjoy those as well. I always kind of have an objective or a set of objectives for these talks. And by the end of this, I want you to be able to understand what the employer's side of the hiring journey looks like. Because oftentimes we get so stuck in thinking, like, how do we say the right thing or be really impressive? And at the end of the day, if we have a greater understanding of how our employers are seeing us, then we get a better chance of really knowing what it is that we need to do to connect. Talk about what it means to be meaningfully different as a candidate, because if you're coming out of school and maybe you have the same sort of business degree or Bachelor of Science as someone else and the other 100 people that are graduating with you, it can be really difficult to think of yourself as different, but it is possible. We'll talk a little bit tactically about how you can create an actual one-liner. I'm going to get into that and give you a few examples around how you can create something where you put yourself out there really in a succinct and understandable way. Like, for example, with me, I am a coach who specializes in helping students transition from school to the working world. It's not the first time I've said that, and it won't be the last. And developing your own line that has a similar kind of, I'm not saying ring to it, but has some familiarity and truth for you will allow you to come across as a lot more confident in the way that you communicate your value. You're also going to choose to become the guide and not the hero, and I will just leave it at that. And we'll visit that as we get through this together. So I say this kind of a little bit tongue-in-cheek here. The buyer's, the lover's journey, the employer's journey, they're all very similar processes where people, humans, we have to go through this experience of getting to know something before we can learn to like whatever that is. It could be a person, it could be a house, a car, it could be a phone, it could be anything really. And then from that likeness, do we believe in it? Do we have a level of trust in it that we can say to ourselves, yes, I can move forward and basically make a buying decision? That's what it is for an employer. When they hire someone, they're making a buying decision, and what they're buying is you and your abilities. And so much in the same way that you might research a physical object that you're buying, you go through this journey of knowing something, learning to like it or not. And if you don't like it, then you're going to go do something. You're going to go find something else. Well, know, like, and trust the thing that at the end of the day, you're going to take action on. So first part of this talk is really going to be emphasizing the know part in terms of how do we communicate value, because the unknown candidate can't be hired. Okay, and I like to kind of give, for emphasis, a little bit of a story here So this is a Toyota Corolla, very, very popular, widely known vehicle sold throughout the world. And everyone kind of knows, if you have an interest in driving, probably has an idea that the Corolla is sort of a really accessible car. It's nothing too fancy. It gets you from point A to point B, usually pretty safely. It's not super expensive. And versus this car, which is called the Dacia Duster, okay? And it's not really known in North America. I don't believe it's sold in most parts of North America. It's much bigger in Europe. And so people here in Canada, in the United States, anywhere in North America, we might not have any understanding or knowledge that this car even exists. Okay, we can't access something if we don't know that it exists. So that's sort of just a little bit of a fun way of understanding, like, am I a Corolla and lots of people know about me and understand my value clearly, or am I this cool car that no one can actually seem to buy? That's really important. Once we have our value stated and we're clear on that, it becomes a game of how do we show up and build trust with people. That's really done through repeated exposure. So if you think about any kind of, again, a buying decision that you're making on something that is, especially on something that is expensive, and hiring people for companies is an expensive act. They want to get it right. They don't want to get it wrong, because just hiring another person is also another expensive thing that they want to avoid. They want repeated exposure normally to the people that they are going to hire. And so what does that mean exactly for you as a job seeker is repeated exposures happen at every step of the way in the hiring process. How you show up and the value that you're stating in your CV, in your LinkedIn profile, in the email correspondence that you might be having with a recruiter, over the phone, in a phone screen. Like, if you are consistently saying the same things over and over again around the value that you can bring to the table as a candidate, you start to show up in a way where people say, oh, I know exactly what that person is about. Okay, they haven't deviated their story based off of who they're talking to. It's really, really clear. And that elevates the level of trust that you present to the employer. So you want to be consistent. Showing up consistently as someone who's meaningfully different over time will build that trust. And the question may become now, what does it mean to be meaningfully different? And at that point, cue slightly different looking slide, right? So this is really an example of it, is that if you could imagine your CV stacked up against 10, 20, 50, 100 other CVs, would there be something that makes it different from the other ones? Like, are you a new grad coming out of business school, just like all the other people? Or is there something about you, some involvement that you've had, some experience that you've gone through in your life that makes you different? A Rolodex moment to kind of talk a little bit about this, because this is a great sort of litmus test for you as you're developing statements around your unique value, is that if you can create a moment in someone's mind, you're talking to someone that you maybe don't know all that well, you're networking with them, maybe you're talking to a recruiter. This is not so much like in an interview stage type of thing, but if you're building your presence and you're getting yourself out there as a job seeker, you want to be able to tell people something about you and the work that you do that allows them to go, wait a second, I know someone who can help you. Or I've heard of a company that my friend works at, actually, they might be interested in looking at you and your candidacy. Okay. Or, you know what, I have a friend, Bob, he does the exact same job that you're looking for. He's in that industry right now. Let me put you in touch. Okay. The Rolodex moment is when there's enough clarity in your unique value statements that allows people to see and understand who you are and connect you with somebody else or something else. It could be a company or an opportunity or a person. Okay. If you are going out there and you're saying, I'm looking for X, like just I'm looking for a job in management consulting, there's so many things out there. Can you be more specific? What kind of management consulting? Do you want to be in a big firm, a small firm? Who do you want to help? Do you want to help the nonprofit sector? Do you want to help tech startups? There's so many different ways that you could be adding value to the world. But if you are kind of really unclear and vague in the way you're presenting yourself, it's really hard for someone to come up with a Rolodex moment in response. So as you go through the process of creating your own one-liners, this is a really kind of fun and creative exercise. Think of some of these questions here, and I will show you some examples in just a moment. But think about the problems that you like to solve, right? If you're someone who loves to build websites or some kind of a full stack web developer, it's like, yeah, like talk in light of that. Like, what do I do that might also be valuable to the particular employer? Like, maybe you're trying to get into a company that doesn't have a very strong web presence, their website isn't very good, and you can solve that problem using your unique passion and skill set around building great websites. And oftentimes, like, our unique values, they come from being a combination of things. So I'm a career coach, I'm in Montreal, I'm a podcast host, I place people in IT in my 9-to-5, students who are trying to get into the IT world here in Canada. Those are all things that when you put them together, they make, in this case, it makes me different from a lot of other career coaches. And there are other coaches who have their own things that make them unique for them as well. Okay, so what is your unique combination of either skills, or it could be location, or it could be things that you do on the side that really make you not like everybody else? And lastly, like, what makes you weird? Maybe you're an advocate for racial justice. Maybe you are someone who like loves to volunteer for people who are homeless, or you want to be trained on COVID vaccination techniques. There are things, and depending on the environment that you're going in, okay, if it's relevant to that employer, right, keeping your story in line with what the employer is looking for, there's probably something that's kind of interesting about you that an employer would look at and say, oh, like, this person is not just like everybody else. Because lots of people just kind of throw the same generic CV at an employer and they hope that it sticks. They sent it to like 100 other places. And more often than not, you're better off taking a really targeted approach and understanding why you may be a great fit for them. And when you communicate in light of what they need in relation to what you are, who you are as a person, what makes you unique, you got to marry those two things together and you'll create one-liners that stick. So some examples, just to kind of throw a few things out there. You might be someone who says, I analyze the IT needs of small businesses. You could have even been more specific. If this was me, I could have maybe said small retail businesses so that they know where and how they need to make their next big tech investment. Okay, so maybe you're a business analyst and you're explaining to someone who maybe is not super technical. Give them a sense of what it is you actually do. Speak in a language that is common and easily understood. You might say, I'm an international business school graduate, trying to break into that kind of world. Maybe I want to go into international development. I grew up in 3 different European countries and I speak these 4 languages. Okay, those are things that make you different. I hold an MSc in genomic medicine, and I've completed internships in 2 large multinational pharmaceutical companies. Okay, so just that one sentence tells a lot of information about you to someone that you've never met before. And sometimes when we're meeting people, either in like a networking context, could be virtual, right, with the pandemic, or if we're writing an outreach message to someone, a recruiter, and we only have 300 characters to send that message, we have to be able to be really concise and talk in a way that communicates a lot around who we are and makes sense. So, I mean, maybe I would write this kind of a message if I was trying to get in touch with a recruiter who places people in big pharma. Just for fun, right? To kind of go back to the, what makes you weird kind of thing. I'm looking to get a screenwriting gig because not everyone here wants to be a business person or a scientist. Trying to get into the local theater scene. I've been performing Shakespeare in front of my family since I was 5. And you get an idea of like, just bring your unique characteristics to the table. And the more confidently you do that, right? This isn't me, by the way. I just kind of imagine myself as someone who's doing that, but be yourself in a way that is relevant to the employer, right? I wouldn't have said, I've been performing Shakespeare since I was 5. If I was interviewing to be a mechanical engineer, for example, that might not compute, probably wouldn't. In terms of actually building this kind of a one-liner, this brand statement, I often say start at 50 words. So write down, take a piece of paper out, write down 50 words. Could be a few sentences here. What are the things that you do that are that you're really good at, that you love to do, and maybe reflect who you like to help in particular. And from those 50 words, can you cut it in half? Can you build a sentence now, or maybe two, that's 25 words long? Can you get that message down into something that's even shorter and more concise? From 50, can you go and cut from 50 to 25? Can you cut that down again? Can you go to something like 12 or 10 words? And usually at that point, you're starting to get really, really good clarity about what the unique value that you bring is. And then once you have that sentence down, you have that unique value statement, it can go into a whole bunch of places. It could go and be the headline of a resume. It could be in your about section on your LinkedIn profile. It could be the first thing that comes out of your mouth when you meet someone at a networking event, or even like when someone asks you that question of tell me a bit about yourself in an interview. You have a really concise entry into that conversation that allows people to say right away, oh, yes or no, because some people, you're not going to be made for everyone here. But the clearer you are on this statement, the easier it becomes for you to show up and give it a lot of power and meaning. When it comes to the actual interview, and this is the last little bit I'll share around communicating your unique value, and I'll take some questions. We go from kind of having this one-liner personal brand statement to being able to flesh out our value through storytelling. And storytelling, really simply, doesn't have to be complicated. Basic story is like there's a character, right? There's some sort of protagonist who encounters a problem. And then the story is usually around them taking some kind of an action that leads to a resolution of the story. Like most movies, you go and, any box office, like major motion picture, the Avengers movies, all of those things, they kind of follow this formula. And you can too. It's really simple. In the case of an employer, it's the employer that has the problem. Okay? They are the central character in the story. And they're taking action in the form of hiring someone who is going to solve the problem that they're facing. So the more you can understand the problem that an employer is facing and tell stories from your own experiences that relate to you solving a similar problem or having even just been exposed to that problem. I know when you're getting started in your career, you might think, I don't have a lot of experience with this problem, but maybe you've seen it somewhere else, or you have a specific interest in solving this problem and you can demonstrate it through something that you've done, involvement in an association, volunteer work, etc., things like that. You're creating the resolution for the employer where they are resolving the problem by hiring the person who will solve the problem. You want them to feel like this is going to be the story that they will end up with, which is why I'm going to remind you at this point. So this is where you don't want to be that character who has the problem. You don't want to be the hero. You want to be the guide. You want to be the action, the person that is brought in to solve the problem for an employer. And that's like, once you get that idea down, it changes everything for you, really, because now you're thinking about like, how do I understand this employer that I'm approaching really carefully and thoroughly, and I'm doing my research on. The person who is most liked and trusted will get hired. And that's how we have to position ourselves. We want to be the guides that are highly trusted, because the people who have the most trust at the end of the day, they get the job offer, okay? So instead of being all worried about like, what do I have to say? What do I have to write in my resume? All of the answers are out there if you become clear on the heroes that you are trying to help, the employers, and the problems that they are trying to solve, okay? And from there, you present how you would solve their problems. Consistently done over time builds trust, increases your chances of actually getting the job. Cool. A couple little things I would encourage you to check out. So the podcast that I co-host with Lisa Plain is another career coach. She's actually based more in the GTA than I am. That show comes out every Wednesday morning. We've released 76 episodes right now. We just released an episode around recruiting and understanding how the world of recruiting, agency recruitment works, so you can tap into a recruiter if that's something that is important to your job search. I also just released a 5-day mini course for helping you connect on LinkedIn with other people. I call it Connecting Effortlessly on LinkedIn. So you can check that out at my site if you would like. Otherwise, I'd be really more than happy to connect with you via LinkedIn, or if you'd like to shoot me an email, if there's a question you'd like to ask me in private, don't be afraid to reach out to me. I love engaging with people that I meet at events. It's a lot of fun, and I just love helping job seekers. So I'm going to press pause at this point on the slide deck and get into any questions that you might have at this point. So feel free to chat in with any questions you've got at this point, and I'd be happy to answer. Cool. Thanks, Jesse. I hope my slides, if they weren't big enough, I hope that the resizing of them worked. I'd be curious to know a little bit more about the people who are here, what they're looking to do, and if they want to take a shot at actually maybe writing a unique value statement. What is it that makes you different from other job seekers? Okay, so Mithra said you're in your first semester cybersecurity course at Sioux College, looking for a part-time job. Okay, and so nice. Like, you're looking for a part-time job. And in cybersecurity, you're not just looking for something that just anything that could pay your bills. Can you be a little bit more specific? So if that was your value statement, like, can you come out and say cybersecurity? I'm really interested, for example, maybe in banking, like cybersecurity as it pertains to a finance firm. Can you connect that dot for someone who is trying to understand exactly what you're looking for? Let's see, anyone else want to come in? Oh, there we go. International student, currently in Toronto. So the same kind of, this is coming from Mithra again. A full stack developer having more than 7 years experience in Java, Spring Boot, Angular. Okay, cool. Well, that, that definitely says a lot more now. That's really neat. Depending on where you are. So if you're meeting someone in person in Toronto, you might not necessarily say that you're living in Toronto, because that's a given, and you might cut down a little bit on, although you have a nice full stack tech stack in your skill set, which is great. It may be tough to put all of those terms onto somebody if it's the first time they're encountering you. So like, what are the 2 or 3 parts of your tech stack that you're really, really solid in? Because when I hear someone looking for a Java developer, for example, I can find resumes of students that I work with that are not just generic and regular full stack developers, but people who have a real interest in being a Java full stack developer. And that just is a key for me to say, okay, this student is a really good fit for the employer that's reaching out to me right now. I will put their CV in front of them and see where it goes. But I definitely like this second statement more than the first statement. It's telling me a lot more about your skill set. Cool. Anyone else? Please tap into this opportunity. Take a shot. The first time you write your value statement, it's probably not going to be the one that you stick with forever and ever. It evolves over time. Cool. If no one else wants to jump in, I will turn it back. I don't know if maybe I'm done a little bit too early for Alex to be here, but if there's anything that you'd like me to dive into further that I discussed in the PowerPoint, I know I kind of touched pretty quickly on some different things, but feel free to ask for any clarification there. Oh.
Hi, Mike. Can
Awesome.
You hear me?
Yeah, hey Alex, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Hi, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be back.
It's great to have you back. I know you've spoken, I think, at the past few ones we've done since we actually started this event. It's always great to work with you. Yeah, it doesn't look like, unfortunately, there's any questions in the chat here. If anyone does have any questions, feel free, make use of this this event and this session. Mike is definitely a very knowledgeable guy, and he's a great source of information. So feel free to put some questions in chat here for him. But otherwise, I just kind of wanted to get a sense, because I know, it's a 30-minute session, so I'm sure you're kind of really fast. What do you think is sort of the key takeaways someone should get from your session and your presentation?
Yeah, the more simply that you can state the value that you bring, okay, and really without confusing people, because sometimes we want to get bogged down in saying cool, fancy words. And if I kind of just use like, or we lack enough clarity in what we're saying for people to really have like that aha moment, then we're not generating aha moments or Rolodex moments in people where they can think of something that's an opportunity for us to pursue, then we need to take a look and see, because it's how we're marketing ourselves. And the marketing is either resonating with someone, could be an employer, could be a friend, or it's not resonating, and that's where we need to troubleshoot.
Definitely, yeah. That's some good advice. I do see a question here from Calvin Chow.
Oh, yeah.
Apologies if I pronounced your last name wrong, Calvin. So he says, how do I phrase my unique value prop to help businesses with minimal experience?
Help businesses with minimal. So you're saying, Calvin, I'm guessing, correct me if I'm wrong, so your experience at this point is pretty minimal. You're at the start of your career. So, I mean, yeah, okay, perfect. Thanks for clarifying that. So, I mean, have you done anything outside of your studies? That would be the first thing, first place to look. Have you ever interned in a place that might be a little bit, yeah, perfect, internships. So internships are a really great chance. And you can talk about where you've interned, you talk about what you did specifically in that internship. Because if an employer can see that you already have some experience doing certain things, maybe it was in marketing, maybe it was in finance, again, now you're not just like a sort of a generic, let's say, business student. So internships for sure. If you've been part of like any kind of a business club within your university, lots of people are active in things like that. You network regularly. Is there something that you've done there that you can pull from? Perform tasks, but I wasn't involved in the measurements. Okay. Yeah, that's the great challenge, right? Sometimes you're, at the very least, okay, you can talk about the tasks that you have performed. You can add a little bit more life to them. So like, how often did you perform these tasks? What did these tasks do? Even if it was for the larger team that you were a part of, yeah, you might not be able to say like, I closed a ton of business in a 4-month internship period, if I was in sales, let's say. But there's always a way of measuring what you did. Like, you'd be surprised. Like, I slept last night? Did I sleep 8 hours, or did I sleep 6 hours, or did I wish I could sleep 10 hours still? But there's always ways that you can quantify things. So dig into that a little bit more. Feel free to email me. I'd love to hear more about the efforts that you have put in through your internships.
Awesome, great. Yeah, so I think that was the only question there. So I know it's 3:30 now, so we have hit the end of the session. And I see you have your contact information there. So is that the best way for people to reach you, through LinkedIn?
Totally. Yeah.
Great.
Love meeting people there.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Mike, for speaking at another event. It's always great to have you. It's great to work with you again. And just to let everyone know, so that is the end of our sessions for today. So next up is actually our main stage panel, and that will go until 4 and close off the event. Thanks again, Mike. It's great to have you.
My pleasure. Take care, Alex. All the best to everyone here.
Bye.